1. While international public opinion continues to closely monitor 2. A statement from the White House unexpectedly emerged, as if someone had just pressed the end button for the entire story. 3. U.S. President Donald Trump announced that after a phone call. 4. Bangkok and Phnom Penh had agreed to a complete ceasefire, with the agreement taking a 5. According to Trump, the risk of escalating conflict had been halted. 6. Peace had been restored, and the U.S. once again played a central role in diffusing a regional hostility.
7. This message stunned the world.
8. Not only because of its content but also due to its timing and delivery. 9. In a context where the world is witnessing prolonged and hard-to-control conflicts from Ukraine to the Middle East. 10. The idea that a phone call could immediately cool down an armed clash in Southeast Asia. 11. Brings a sense of both relief and a degree of disbelief. 12. For those familiar with Trump's talk. 13. This statement is not too unfamiliar. Concise, decisive, emphasize. 14. And evoking the image of Washington as an indispensable. 15. According to Trump, both sides agreed to return to the peace agreement reached last July in Malay. 16. With U.S. over. 17. He described the exchanges as positive and good. 18. While expressing satisfaction at being able to help prevent a larger war in Southeast Asia. 19. In this narrative, all the pieces seem to fall. 20. The U.S. stepped in to connect, the parties listened, and peace. 21. However, just a few hours later, the story began to take a 22. From Bangkok, Thai Prime Minister Ong Chanthaburakan publicly refuted. 23. He asserted that no complete ceasefire agreement had been reached in the manner described by Washington. 24. Moreover, the Thai side accused Cambodian forces of continuing attacks, resulting in. 25. The message from Bangkok revealed a contrasting reality. Instead. 26. Thailand still viewed itself as facing an unresolved security. 27. From that point on, developments on the ground made the ceasefire declaration even more. 28. Reports of artillery shelling, airstrikes, and clashes hit. 29. The Thai Air Force deployed F-16 fighters in operations described as territorial. 30. Cambodia accused Thailand of attacking multiple civilian infrastructure. 31. Many began questioning the nature of the so-called ceasefire agreement mentioned by the U.S. 32. When was it agreed upon, between which parties, and were there any specific binding terms? 33. Or was this simply a political interpretation? 34. Put forward when the involved parties had only agreed to. 35. For a segment of intelligence, information, and analysis.
36. This could be seen as a diplomatic move.
37. In reality, it might. 38. Presented when the involved parties had only agreed to continue. 39. But had not yet reached the point. 40. The Thai leadership's assertion that no ceasefire order had been issued. 41. Further fuel. 42. In subsequent statements, Bangkok emphasized that all military actions stem from a. 43. And the need to. 44. This line of reasoning shows that Thailand does not view the U.S. statement as a turning. 45. In Bangkok's argument, the conflict is still ongoing, and there are no sufficiently reliable. 46. On the other side, Cambodia adopted a more conciliatory. 47. Prime Minister Hun Sen thanked the mediation effort. 48. Reaffirming commitment to a peaceful solution based on the 49. Phnom Penh even proposed using satellite imagery to determine. 50. A move indicating a desire to bring the verification process before it. This approach helps Cambodia build an image of a party willing to cooperate and adhere to peace mechanisms. No matter how complex the on-the-ground developments may, two responses, two linguistic systems, and a statement from the White House standing create a paradoxical picture. For many observers, this is not just a story about Thailand and Cambodia being unable to cease fire, but also a larger question about the role and actual weight of statements from the U.S. in the current context. In the past, a U.S. president declaring a ceasefire agreement often carried clear consequences. Whether in the Middle East, the Balkans, or the Korean, words from Washington typically came with diplomatic pressure, monitoring mechanisms, and political leverage strong to compel parties to seriously consider. However, the case of Thailand and Cambodia shows a notable gap between statements and the ability to control development. Many opinions suggest that Mr. Trump's statement was ahead of reality, placing expectations on an outcome that the parties are not yet ready to realize. There is also a view that this is Washington's effort to reaffirm influence in Southeast Asia, especially in the context where the U.S. previously appeared as a witness to the peace agreement in Malaysia in July. Quickly announcing a ceasefire order can be seen as the White House's way of maintaining a central role in the narrative, even if the ground is not yet ready to follow that script. However explained, the reality is that bombs still echoed after the peace declaration. This inevitably leaves public opinion with a sense of skepticism. The question raised is not only whether U.S. words are being taken lightly, but also whether Washington itself underestimated the complexity, suspicion, and strategic calculations between Bangkok and Phnom Penh. For many external observers, it feels like a joke not stemming from the conflict itself. but from the excessive dissonance between diplomatic messaging and battlefield reality. One side declares peace has been established, another insists nothing has changed, and in between are communities continuing to bear direct consequences. This very dissonance makes the Thai-Cambodia story particularly noteworthy in the current geopolitical context. For many years, the U.S. has been seen as a power center capable of significantly impacting reconciliation process.
Washington's appearance as a witness to the peace agreement in Malaysia in July
between Thailand and Cambodia was once viewed as a political guarantee, sending a message that the parties were acting within a framework monitored by the world's leading power. However, when a party directly involved in the conflict publicly rejects the U.S. president's ceasefire, that guarantee effect is immediately undermined. Many analysts believe this is not merely a communication mishap or diplomatic misunderstanding, it reflects a fundamental difference in perspectives on a ceasefire order.
Viewpoint, leaders.
However, for directly confronting parties, a ceasefire is a military decision tied to specific security, mutual trust steps, and actual control mechanisms on the battlefield. The gap between these two approaches leaves the White House statement in a state of being ahead of reality. When no ceasefire order is issued to the military, no independent monitoring mechanism exists, and no binding document is published,
the peace appeal is easily perceived as a political message rather than an effective commitment.
In that context, questions about the credibility and actual weight of U.S. diplomacy become clearer, though it cannot yet be concluded that Washington's role has absolutely diminished. Some cautious opinions suggest this development reflects changes in the global strategic environment, where middle powers increasingly assert autonomy in security decisions. In such a context, even a superpower finds it hard to impose a reconciliation pace if involved parties are not ready to accept political and military. From the perspective of reasoning on the media front, the difference in Thailand and Cambodia's responses shows a parallel battle occurring. Bangkok emphasizes self-defense rights and security conditions, while Phnom Penh chooses the language of peace and calls for international. This battle is not only aimed at the opponent but also at global public opinion, where the image of restraint or escalation can directly affect diplomatic standing. Viewed from a broader angle, regional crises are unlikely to be quickly resolved by external declaration. As strategic competition among major powers intensifies and power structures become more fragmented, the region faces the challenge of finding more effective mechanisms to manage. In that context, the story between Thailand and Cambodia serves as a reminder that peace cannot be established by words alone, but requires practical conditions and a sufficient level of trust to be sustained.
Item 2. Item 3. Item 4. Item 5. Item 6. Item 7. Item 8.
Like the journey? Subscribe and join the next expedition.